Well, Cavs fans, that was it's embarrassing of a loss for the wine and gold that I can remember in recent history, in my recent memory bank. Certainly this year in a season for the Cavaliers that has been historically dominant. They've been a resilient group all year. They've talked a lot about that. But to come out and play the way that they did in a game that felt like it was pretty much a must win, right? Like they needed to take both of these in Indy to sort of put yourself back in a good place where you feel pretty good about the series, coming back home for Game 5, and to get to be down at one point by 44 points. Put together one of the worst first halves of basketball I think I've ever watched in my entire life. And then on top of it all, you lose Donovan for the second half. It sounds like he's going to play in Game 5. He made it sound like that. But that's another topic we have to get into. I mean, Spence, I was at a loss of words in some respects because I have tried so hard to defend the fact that this team was bucking the narratives that were out there about them not being tough. You and I both have kind of been on that crusade, right? We both have tried to stand up for the fact that we think they've taken strides and steps towards not being this team that people thought they were from a couple years ago when they got gentlemen swept by the Knicks. And we kept going back to that and saying people need to get over that. But tonight, Spence, is a night that feels like those people win. Those people get to be right because when you come out and you look as gutless as you did, and you look like you have no answer for a counter punch from Indiana, who they were ready for the 2-3 zone, and they attacked it early and got the Cavs out of it early, and they couldn't really do much with it from what was the effective thing from game 3. You had no answer. And when that's the case, like those narratives about you, like it's hard for people like you or I to defend them and try to come out and say, they're not true, because when you play like that and you look like that in an important pivotal game like this, like there's not really much defending to go on. There's not really much that we can say in the way of like positivity for this team. And so in that respect, those people who called them frauds all year, they get to be right tonight. And it sucks because I don't think that they're frauds, but they looked like it tonight. And you talked about it a little bit on the podcast last week. This is results-based business. And tonight the result told you this team looks like they're ready for vacation. They look closer to being ready for a vacation than they do being an actual team that has a chance to win an NBA Finals.
It lends credence to the memes. It gives everybody who has been in on my mentions and your mentions all of the material they need. I don't have a box score today. I cannot come away with that game anything positive at all. Nothing. Maybe because Darius Garland got going a little bit in the second half to find a little bit of a rhythm. But the Pacers were more aggressive. They were more physical. They were very much so looking to respond to a game that they knew they lost. First one at home, ability to possibly, try and sweep the Cavs. And they came out just guns a-blazing, ready to go. Tyrese Halliburton, one heck of a punch back after his worst game of the series. And Obi Toppin, man, really just blew the roof off of this place with his activity. But the Cavs, they were just getting pushed off their spots. And defensively, they just could not do anything because they were so bad offensively. They had no rhythm, not a semblance of a rhythm. They had 4 combined field goal attempts between Evan Mobley and Jared Allen in the first half. They had 6 points in the paint at halftime. The Pacers had more than, I think, 17, 18 shot attempts than them because they were turning it over like crazy. They had 14 turnovers at half.
Yeah, in the first half, yeah.
And the game started out. DG dribbles it off of his leg, and it goes out of bounds, and that kind of just sets the tone right away. And then Indiana, obviously going to bounce back from a couple of decent shooting nights to being back to themselves that we saw in Game 1, where they were hitting everything from deep. And that just really got everything going. You had the shoving match with Benedict Mathurin and DeAndre Hunter. Mathurin gets tossed. You think that maybe the Cavs can galvanize.
I thought that was going to be a spark. I thought that was going to be a spark for the Cavs. I thought that was going to be a moment of like, okay, the guy that's been the irritant, the guy that has caused some problems for this team in terms of like being sort of that physical guy that's kind of putting some extra, juice into things and going at him and Hunter have kind of been going at it this series since that first game. I thought that was going to be something that got the team sort of ignited and going. The fact that he got to stay and Matherin didn't, and it didn't do anything. It did nothing. They looked gutless. They looked lifeless. They had no response for anything that happened tonight.
Nothing at all. And I'm in a complete agreement with you. I think Max Strus was getting into a tizzy with someone. Darius Garland chirping with Aaron Nesmith. So obviously things are physical and chippy out there, but you can tell that they just have not grown closer to one another as the series has gone by.
Yeah.
But I mean, I got nothing, honestly. You can look at my timeline for what I've been saying throughout the game. And that pretty much sums up how I feel. I'm with you, man. Complete sham of a game, man. And I think they deserve to be eviscerated today. It's just, I'm with you. I've been coming to their defense all year long, and this one felt different. They got pushed around today. They got absolutely blown out. There's no other way to put it. I don't know what more you could say about it, because one, it wasn't them. I see everyone say Pacers have a better team, they're deeper and all that stuff. The Cavs bench has been just horrendous in this series. Other than Sam Merrill playing good defense, Dean Wade cannot make a shot. Ty Jerome has been basically rendered ineffective in this series. DeAndre Hunter hasn't done too much. It's been the starting five either plays well, and that's the game that they're gonna, end up being in and possibly win, like we saw in game 2. They set the tone and should have won that game. Obviously did not, because Hallie hit the game winner. But in game 3, Cavs starters obliterated the Pacers starters. No answer. Tonight, Pascal Siakam was their MVP. He completely busted the 3-2 zone. Awesome in the ISO. He was hitting his shots, really got into a rhythm, just any spot he wanted to get to. And then once he started getting to those spots, he started hitting the contested ones. Miles Turner picking pops, hit 2 or 3 trail threes in a row. This place was going insane. It was a lot louder in here today, by the way, than game 3, which makes sense because they were winning by 40. But it just all went awry, very fast.
Yeah,
and you could tell from the jump. The Pacers came out, set the tone. I was like, all right, Cavs got to take the first hit here. This is what usually happens in a home playoff game. And then they had nothing offensively. They were I go back to the paint stat and the field goal attempt stat for Evan and Jarrett. They weren't running anything. They couldn't get to their spots. So it was so much just, we're going to slop up a shot and hope it falls. And they've already not been shooting well, even when they do have good looks. Yeah. So then when they were just running this kind of free-for-all offense, and it was just getting nowhere. Their only saving grace was that they got to the free throw line. If they didn't get to the free throw line, they might have had 20 points at half. It was insane.
Yeah, no, I mean, Spence, so here's the thing, because I think there is a level of, okay, you got to give Indiana some credit. I don't want to disrespect how Indiana played. It was very game 1-esque, where they played a really good game. They were hitting everything. And sometimes there's nothing you can do about that. Game 1, it was that exact thing. There was nothing you could do about it. They were hitting their shots, you weren't. And you made it interesting. It was a tight game later, and then they pulled away late and they won, and you just kind of, it was what it was, right? So if that was how this game played out, you just kind of tip your cap and keep it moving. But tonight it was the fact that Indiana was hitting everything, and you had no sort of answer. You had nothing. And game 3 felt like a team that knew our backs are against the wall. Let's go get this thing. They had talked about going into that game, hey, they won 2 at our place. We got to win 2 at their place. They played with a desperation. They played with a sense of urgency. Tonight it felt like they almost were playing as a team that, you split the first 2 and you got one on the road to get home court back. So you were content with just kind of okay, let's just get through game 4. We'll get back home for game 5 and make it's a best of 3 the rest of the way. And that's not anywhere close to the complexion of what the series really is. So from that, and that's the thing I think that was the most perplexing to me, Spence, was, listen, they've been shooting bad this series, that those things happen. I can live with you you're shooting poorly and it just isn't working for you in a series, and that's how you lose because you got cold at the worst possible time, I can understand that that's something that happens. But to go out with like no fight and frankly have no answer, like Spence, this was the first time I found myself by the end of like the first quarter, maybe like a few minutes into the second quarter, where because I heard Kenny's quote pregame. I heard his quote pregame about we know they're going to have an answer for the 2-3 zone. We gotta be ready to adjust. They weren't. Like this was the first time I found myself saying, Spence, they were not prepared for a game. Like I never felt that all year. All year it was like, okay, some games went their way more often than not. Most games went their way more often than not. There were some games that didn't obviously go their way, but like I never once went into a game feeling like or watched the game unfold and said, yeah, this team just wasn't ready for this one today. Like tonight though, and it sucks that it happened this time of year. Tonight felt like they were not prepared. They were not ready. They weren't there mentally. They weren't there physically. No, like you said, their offense was non-existent. Like the efficient offense, it's like moving the ball, creating good looks, getting Evan Mobley involved. You brought up that Evan Mobley stat. Like I was wondering in the second quarter where the hell Evan Mobley had been. And then I think the broadcast mentioned, yeah, he's taking like 3 shots tonight. Like at the start of the third quarter, they're like, yeah, he's only taking 3 shots. I was like, what? He's only taking 3 shots. How was he not more more involved in this offense? You know how important he is. It was just perplexing, all of it. And it was one of those games where, we talk about the Cavs being at their best when everyone's kind of involved, everyone's able to sort of function, everyone's able to touch the ball and do some things. They got completely out of sync and they just started, like you said, like chucking stuff up there. Like they had they lost their identity completely. And they looked like they were just like a lost puppy dog. Like they were like, we have nothing to do. We have no answers. We have nothing. Let's just get out of here and get home for game 5. Like it was embarrassing. And again, maybe they come out with a different sense of urgency in game 5, but I just, you talk about where do you go from here? I don't know how you bounce back from this because this was as embarrassing a loss I've ever seen from a Cavs team that I can remember, even dating back to, the LeBron years or whatever else when they were really bad. They'd had some bad losses, but we just knew they were bad and that was going to happen. For this team that had so many expectations and to be this good because we know they're good. We know they're a good team. For them to play like that was pathetic. It was pathetic. I'm using all the buzzwords I can, but it was awful, man. It was gross.
Yeah, and you just mentioned it, man. Like Evan Mobley with 3 shot attempts in the first half. Jared Allen had 1. He had 1 shot attempt, and nothing was going towards the paint. Nothing. It was the most bizarre thing. And even in the first quarter when they were like trying to answer the Pacers kind of coming out of the gate, I tweeted out, I was like, the Cavs' brains are ahead of their bodies. So they were playing a little too fast. And then like the fact that the turnovers just kind of snowballed into the Pacers getting up the floor, Tyrese outletting it up the floor. And, you have, like I said, Pascal played his butt off. Nesmith had some really good moments. You had Nemhard making his shots. It turned very quickly. But I am surprised you haven't asked me about Donovan Mitchell yet, though, because that's kind of burying the lead, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, listen, I mentioned it slightly earlier. It is burying the lead to an extent, but man, like there's so many emotions just even as us covering this team that I think come out of this game because, again, Spence, like you and I have been two of the biggest advocates for the narratives about this team aren't true. And I think that's probably why I'm so angry. I mean, listen, Cavs fans are angry because they're fans and they have every right to be. Like this was a terrible performance tonight. But I think we're angry from a standpoint of not that we look like idiots per se, but Spence, like we have banged the drum for this team not being that team anymore. We've said they're tough and mentally tough and physically tough. And then when they give you a performance like this, we do kind of look like idiots because everyone's like, you tried telling me otherwise, and we knew not to take the bait, and it looks like fool's gold. And now like all those things that were said about them rise back to the surface and they have to somehow answer for that. So I think that's why I'm frustrated. I'm sure that's partially why you're frustrated. And so I think that was where we needed to start because you give us a performance like that, like there's no other way we can respond is by calling out just what a dreadful performance it was. But the Mitchell thing is that now this underlying or really overarching storyline going into game 5, because if you don't have Donovan Mitchell, in the same way that you didn't have Donovan Mitchell against the Celtics last year. It feels like this series is, for all intents and purposes, over. It might feel like that anyway because of the game that we got tonight. But if you don't have Donovan Mitchell, it for sure feels like it's over. Now, I don't know if you saw this yet. I know Chris Fedor, Cleveland.com reported he talked to Donovan, and Donovan said he's going to be good. He's going to play. So he'll see us. He said he will be there game 5. But I don't know if you got any sense of anything, Spence, or like how serious this thing is, or what maybe is going on with the ankle.
Just caught him in the hallway, gave him a nod back. He's going to get an MRI tomorrow. Kenny didn't mention anything about his availability or anything like that. It's going to be based on the results of that, obviously. Yeah. So we will keep an eye on that. That's going to be coming out tomorrow, probably when I'm on the road back to Cleveland. So that's just pretty much what I've got there. I will say, I mean, as crazy as it sounds, like Darius Garland was bringing up the 3-1 stuff. Like this franchise has done it before. So that team clearly has the same messaging and they're on the same page in that sense. They've been talking, and Evan Mobley said it. Kenny Atkinson said it. Hey, we got the next 2 out of 3 at home. Take care of home, and then you got to just win one on the road. So I think that they're going to come back from 3-1 in this series? No, I think that there's a war of attrition here happening. And I think that the physical nature of this and Donovan being hurt the way he is, I just think it's just going to be too much at this rate, especially like tonight was the final blow. And I also think game 2 in particular, that really put them behind the 8 ball.
Well, of course. I mean, listen,
they outplayed them in that game. And they just completely blew it. And I mean, that's going to hurt.
And Spence, like, let's face it, man. Like, we were there that night. We were doing our post game like this from the arena. Like, we both talked about being frustrated for the team because you knew what it took for Donovan to give you almost a 50 burger while dealing with a calf injury. You knew that they outplayed them. You knew that they were in position to win that game. Like, that's the game you look back on. And like, because listen, and here's the other thing. Like, so much of pro sports, so much of the NBA, we make it such a game-to-game thing when it doesn't have to be all the time. In terms of like this game dictates what like like one game can define a team one way or another. And like that's the thing about tonight. Like tonight would be just a blip. It would be like, okay, you got blown out. We were down by 44 at one point, but you're going back home. If they won game 2, I'm saying that's how this game would be viewed. It would have been like, okay, you got blown out. It happens. I mean, even the LeBron teams. How many times did and that against the Warriors in the finals, it'd be like one team wins by 30, you go the next game, the other team wins by 30. Like that stuff happens in the NBA. But it's the fact that like this followed what had transpired already in this series, and game 2 is the one that feels like the most devastating because if you win that game, we're viewing the series completely differently. You are going home with a split of each team's home games, and you have home court. Like then it does become a best of 3 series. So like that game, I think tonight felt like like you said in terms of like, do you think the Cavs are going to come back? Tonight felt like the final, like the straw that breaks the camel's back in terms of like, yeah, they're probably not coming back to win the series. But game 2 is going to be the game that we all look back on and say, you don't blow that game, who knows how that series goes, especially once you get guys back for game 3 the way they did, that were healthier, Evan Mobley, DeAndre Hunter, Darius Garland, etc. So game 2 really is the one. Like that's the game that I think ultimately is going to end up deciding the series, and it's likely going to decide it here for Indiana. They can talk about the 3-1 stuff. They can throw that out there. I get all that. But we know that takes like, I mean, that was it. The run to do it in 2016, the way that LeBron and company did, was historic. Like that's not something that happens very often. I still try to subscribe to the idea that this team is built for something like this, that they've been resilient all year in that way when they've been down big and they've had to come back. Like we've seen it before. But at the same time, I also didn't think that this team had something like this in them tonight. So I guess my faith in them doing something like this is wavering even more than it usually would. In a normal circumstance, I might be able to say to you, hey, I still believe this team can pull something like this off. But the way that they lost tonight, I can't sell that to you. Like, I just can't do it.
Yeah, it was different than any other blowout. It was just like a soul crusher. Like that was the way that it appeared to me, at least. And I mean, you could hear a pin drop in the locker room after the game. Like, and obviously, I mean, you lose by as many as you lost by. It's going to be like that. But the stars, are confident. Like Darius and Evan are confident, and you know that Donovan's going to speak even keeled as always when we talk to him next. But hey, they got their work cut out for them now, man. It's not likely. It's not likely. So they prove us wrong. They prove us wrong, and then we look good again. But I mean, you got to win three straight against this type of team, who is clearly feeling themselves and hitting on all cylinders, and they're not just relying on one player. It's tough to beat. You got to play team ball just like you did against Miami. And, you know, the team ball that we're used to seeing. Like, that's the other thing too about this is like Mitchell's hand kind of got forced in this playoffs because of DG's injury, and then you had Dre and Evan, and so he was back to playing that downhill, aggressive, got to be all on me type of ball. And that, I think, kind of threw off everything from there offensively. And it was by necessity. Like Donovan had to do that. But like not used to seeing just kind of they're not standing around. Like they are still moving, they are still cutting back screens and all that stuff. Like they're doing that. But it's just not the same. It's not the same offense. It's weird. It's really weird.
Yeah. I think that's really well said, that it's like the offense just looks out of whack. And I thought it was telling again that they came out and were clearly, had to eat a counterpunch from the Pacers after game 3, and they didn't handle it well. And again, that's why you talk about being mentally tough. They didn't look that tonight.
Nope.
And somehow, some way, they have to find a way to be mentally tough enough to swallow this one and get ready for game 5. I mean, Spence, I know there's not a lot of positive spins to take from this one, but like, what is, in your opinion, how do you sort of pivot in game 5? Like, what is the thought process to get yourself back on track in a game 5, back on your home floor? I guess, that should provide some comfort. But if you're going to pull off another remarkable comeback for this franchise, what does game 5 need to look like for this Cavs team? How do they get back to doing what they've done so well all year when, like you said, they're just kind of out of whack and nothing's falling? Because that's the other thing too. Like, what we throw around the phrase of like law of averages, you're going to come back down to earth. I know Kenny Atkinson has downplayed the idea that like, well, hey, the Pacers are going to fall back to the mean in their shooting. And that has not happened this series. They've largely stayed sort of steady with that. They've had 2 games that they were just like brilliant, and 2 games where they were just like still like good, not necessarily great, but good. But the Cavs have just been dreadful shooting wise. Mm-hmm. And at this point, like, I'm not saying that it was like, again, I'm not saying it was who they were all year isn't necessarily who they are. Like, I still think they are a good shooting team, but at this point we have to call it a slump. Like, there's no banking on, well, game 5, like they'll finally snap out of this 3-point shooting slump. Like, no, we've been saying that for 4 games now and it hasn't really happened. So I can't bank on that for game 5. Like, they're in a shooting slump and they could snap out of it in game 5 and then rattle off 3 and ride it all the way to an NBA Finals, or they could just keep doing what they're doing. I'm more inclined to believe that it's just going to be more of the same, where they're just not going to hit these shots. So knowing that like they're in this dreadful slump and nobody's really able to really do that from the outside, no one's really able to contribute from the outside, or just in general their shooting's been bad. Where do they go from here in terms of an offensive game plan and getting back on track?
And volatility and variance is the name of the game in the playoffs. Like you said, one team can win by 30 in a game, and then another team can lose by 30 in the game. I think for the Cavs, it's all about taking care of the basketball, and they've done a good job of that, like the entire playoffs, except for tonight. Tonight was awful, like dreadful, and I think that's what gave the Pacers life. You got to take care of the basketball. You got to touch the paint. For God's sake, touch the paint. They had 6 points in the paint at half. It's not even about just the points in the paint. It's about drawing attention so that you can make your option. Am I going to go to the rim? and are going to use a floater, or am I going to spray it out to a teammate to take a three, or to pump fake and dribble pull up, to pump fake and get to the restricted area? Don't just swing it around on the perimeter. Don't just drive to the baseline out of control with no plan. You got to be a little bit more crisp. You got to be a little bit more of a better executing team. That's point blank period on that. I think that they can absolutely put 130 on anyone any night. Still, that's who they are. They just have not been able to make their threes. And I don't know what the solution to that is, because you look at the majority of these looks, man, they're good looks. And it's how they've played all year. And I just think they need to see the ball go through the net, to be completely honest with you. And, Sam, Max, those guys, we know they can all shoot. They just Max has had a hell of a playoffs. If there's like any solace I take from this, Max has been probably their most consistent player of the playoffs, other than Don, I would say.
Yeah, I agree. He's been. I mean, listen, he's been awesome. Yeah. He really set the tone, like, from a physical standpoint.
Yeah,
I think throughout this series, he, in games where they were shorthanded, he was one of the biggest people stepping up and making an impact on the floor. Didn't necessarily. I mean, he was solid tonight. He shot 42% from three, 44% from the floor. But his impact has been felt. I agree with you on that. But they need other guys.
They need more. They need Ty. Yeah. They need DeAndre. They need
Ty,
those guys.
Ty, those two are the biggest ones. Ty even more so, though, because Ty's
out of whack.
They have when he's missing point blank floaters, which has been such a key proponent of his scoring, his scoring dichotomy.
Yeah.
I don't know what to tell you. He is.
Do you go to CP? Do you look at Craig Porter?
Maybe.
Jr.?
I mean, anything's on the table in a game 5 where you're facing elimination, right? You have to try anything and everything. Even if it's just you throw him out there for a couple of minutes to see how he works with a group, maybe it turns into something. Who knows? I can't explain. It's wild because Ty's such a. He's an outspoken individual. We know that about him. He's never lacking confidence. And you would have thought, he had a couple bad games early on in the series. Okay, he'll snap out of it eventually. Same sort of thing we said with law of averages. But he just, again, I think defines this shooting slump to a T. He's one of the biggest reasons why they're in the shooting slump, because when he's not giving you anything, there's not really much you can do. No. I have no answers for what's going on with Ty Jerome other than I guess he's in a slump. That's about all I got.
I think it's more than a slump. It's when we discussed this on our podcast and off camera after post-game shows from this series. I just think that the Pacers are too quick-footed. I just think that they've gotten him out of his comfort zone now, and they're forcing him to places and being uncomfortable. Andrew Nembhard's a heck of a defender. Aaron Nesmith, heck of a defender. They've got perimeter guys who know what they're doing, and they force him in towards Miles Turner. He's talking about floating over Miles Turner. His floater's been dead. And so if the floater's dead, he's not seeing it go through the net. And now every single one of his 3-point shots has been off, short too. This isn't a series for him. And that happens in the NBA. That's not a Ty exclusive thing. Guys get played out of series just based on matchups and stuff like that. And I hate that buzzword, as you would consider it, but I just don't think he's quick enough for this series. And that's why Sam Merrill played the majority of the minutes in game 3. And tonight, again, I don't know if Ty would have played all that much had Donovan gone down. So who do you look to next? You look at Craig. You look at, Isaac had, at least Isaac saw some go down in the second half tonight. That's a very, very tough pill to swallow.
Yeah.
Ty's got to figure it out quick, or he's just got played out of this series. It's what it is.
Couple comments I was going to throw up here. This one, 2 in a row really from this guy, Talking Comics. He says, Cleveland thought the rest of the series was going to be easy after they won game 3. Same reason they lost game 2. Cavs consistently underestimate and disrespect the Pacers and paid for it. I'd push back on that, though. Like, it's one thing for fans to feel like after game 3, like, oh, we're good now. We got it right. We're going to win. This team from the beginning has talked about this Pacers team understanding they're really good. Like they have made it very clear that like it started with the Halliburton thing and that whole poll that came out and said he was overrated. They were like, nope, we don't believe that. Like they have shown the right amount of respect for this team. They game 2 they just choked, and then tonight they just didn't have any. They looked awful. But the other thing that he said, this Talking Comics, he says Atkinson coached like he thought Carlisle was stupid. The zone that slowed the Pacers in game 2 of game 3 or quarter 2 of game 3 didn't work in quarter 3 of game 3. So why did Atkinson trot it back out tonight? And this is what we alluded to earlier, Spence. Like, I heard Kenny's comments pregame about knowing they were going to have a counter for the zone, and then not having a counter for their counter is what I think was maybe the most perplexing thing from tonight from a coaching standpoint, because this is why towards the end of the JB Bickerstaff era, people were over it, because they felt like JB Bickerstaff didn't have enough chess moves up his sleeve to, counter teams in the playoffs, which is so important this time of year. X's and O's matters. And this was the first time, like I said, I felt like this was the first time I felt like the Cavaliers weren't prepared. It was also the first time I felt like Kenny was out of his depth a little bit, where he didn't necessarily have the best game plan, and he was getting outcoached. I haven't felt like that a lot this year. It's been very rare that I've ever felt that about Kenny Atkinson this year, if at all. But tonight, I'm telling you, it felt like, yes, he was probably outcoached tonight.
Well, here's the thing. Yes, they figured out the 3-2 early. Again, Pascal was the zone buster. That was a beautiful job of him working the middle, face up, shooting, getting to the basket. Pascal is really good with that amount of space. And so once he started doing that and they switched back to man, he already had the confidence that the ball was going through. So I don't think that, they switched up from 3-2 to man pretty quickly.
Yeah, it was quick.
So it's not like he didn't adjust. It's just like the damage was done to that point already, and there was no turning back after that. But yeah, I was surprised that the Pacers figured it out that quickly.
Yeah,
because I thought they really found something with Halliburton in that 3-2 zone and Max denying ball, but. Got to give Pascal credit, man. He's an NBA champion for a reason.
I was also going to throw this one up, and I actually don't necessarily think we need to respond to this tonight, but I think this sort of sets the stage for potential end-of-season conversations, if that's what we're going to be having on Tuesday, Spence. The real Daryl says, if the Cavs lose this series, how does this affect the reputation of Donovan Mitchell? These chances of getting to the conference finals and NBA finals are not guaranteed every season. So listen. I'm throwing it up there because what I think is interesting with this comment, Spence, is like that's where we're headed, right? Mm-hmm. Like that's the conversation that's coming, because it's the same thing we've talked about the last couple of years, like reputation of the team, reputation of Donovan Mitchell. He talks about his reputation, understanding he has to get to that stage and he hasn't gotten there. And that's why, again, like the series isn't over, so I'm not going to sit here and I don't think we need to hash that out tonight and be like, what does this mean for Donovan Mitchell? Like we can save that for a podcast, in June if that's where we're headed. But I think the reason I throw the comment up there is because I do think that is exactly where people's heads are at after a game like tonight. Like I think they're very much, what does this mean for the reputation of the Cavs? What does this mean for the future of the Cavs? What does this mean for Donovan Mitchell, his legacy, all these different things. And the only thing I will say in response to that, Spence, is like, I'm never, like, no matter what happens in game 5, I'm not going to be leaving the series feeling like any type of way about Donovan Mitchell in terms of he's, not a superstar player in this league, that he can't be a star player on a team that wins a championship. Like, I don't believe any of those things. Like the way he played in game 2 told me everything I need to know about Donovan Mitchell. Like he's not a guy that does not show up on the stage. He did it. I know it was the bubble playoffs, but he did it in the bubble. He's done it throughout these playoffs. He's done it on a number of other occasions for the Cavaliers. It just, unfortunately, things sort of fell apart here in the postseason in terms of injuries and just, certain elements of how this team's been playing. I'm not going to leave this series no matter what happens thinking, Donovan is like some lesser player. but I do understand where his legacy is going to be tied to whatever happens, throughout the rest of his career and on this stage, this time of year. It's the nature of the business.
Nature of the business, but it's BS because, this is more of a team indictment than an indictment on Donovan Mitchell, the guy that went out there and had 50% usage in game 2 and then goes out and gets 43 the next game in game 3 with a magnificent performance in Indianapolis. I'm not going to even entertain that, to be honest.
I'm with you. And that's, again, why I thought it was important to establish, our opinions on Donovan Mitchell aren't going to change based off of this series. Because, listen, we were talking to an Indiana beat reporter after game 2, and he said that Donovan's performance was probably the greatest performance he's ever seen in a playoff game in a loss, ever.
That dude's got more guts than I think I've seen any other Cleveland athlete, except for, LeBron.
Dude,
I just if people are going to go there, then they're just losers.
In our crusade,
I'm not kidding.
I Spence, preach, brother. When in our crusade to defend this team, we pointed to game 2. I pointed to game 2, and I said, if you leave game 2 talking about this team's soft, this team's this team's that, Donovan Mitchell just on one leg gave you almost a 50 burger, and you should have won. I get they choked, but I didn't feel that way, and I'm not going to change my opinion about Donovan Mitchell.
Again,
whatsoever.
Talking about the team, understand it.
See,
totally
and now
entertain those conversations. Donovan,
agreed.
Get the hell out.
Agreed. And of course, we've now opened a can of worms where we have comments like he faked an injury tonight like a coward. That's the type of stuff we're getting now, Spence. So that's I think that's our cue to get out of here.
Yes, that is my cue to leave Indianapolis.
We've gotten to 37 minutes. We vented, we ranted, and we are certainly going to have a lot more to talk about in the aftermath of this game. When Spin gets back to Cleveland tomorrow. I guess I'll ask you this, Spence. Will we be heading to Indy for a game 6 on Thursday, or do you think we're going to be, reconciling a season, if you will, after Tuesday night?
I think that they wouldn't let it end on their home floor. I think that. And again, going back to the volatility and the variance of three-point shooting, very decent chance that the Cavs win game 5. But I just don't see him coming all the way back.
I think that's probably a fair way to put it. I would too agree that I think they probably win on Tuesday. I would like to think that they're going to have a response to this, and show some pride on their home floor in front of the home crowd and get a game. But again, coming back to Indiana, I think at this point, my prediction that I had in another platform of Cavs at 6, I lost track of which platforms I said what. I think is going to flip to be Pacers in 6 because I think they'll close it out on their home floor Thursday. But I too am optimistic that we'll at least be heading back to Indy for a game 6. So we'll see if it happens. In the meantime, keep on following along with our written content over at si.com/NBA/Cavaliers. I'm working on a column over there where I kind of rehash a lot of what we talked about on this show, but in written form. So you can find that. But also, please, please, please subscribe to the YouTube channel, Cavaliers on SI. Spence went to Indy to make sure we had you covered. He has a ton of stuff over there. Post-game comments from everybody, which are all going to be linked in the description of this episode as well. So you can find them right below here if you want to make it easy on yourself. But you can see what people were saying after the game. Spin said you could hear a pin drop in the locker room. I'm sure you'll kind of pick up on those vibes from the players and the way that they talk about this game. So please subscribe and please go check out those videos as well. And we'll obviously have you covered as well for Game 5 here in Cleveland with post-game commentary, post-game comments from Spence and I like usual. And we'll, I'm sure at some point, drop a podcast episode this week as well. So stay tuned for all those things. We appreciate you hanging out with us, staying up late with us if you did. And Spence, get home safe, my man. I'm looking forward to seeing you again, even though it's under unfortunate circumstances, as we might have a season-ending game coming down the pike here on Tuesday.
Thanks, partner. I'm going to try to sleep in tomorrow.
You should. You earned it. You earned it. Get some sleep, get home safe, and we will talk to you Tuesday. Keep on following along, as always, though, guys, with the Cleveland Cavaliers. Keep on following along with all things Cleveland Cavaliers with the Cleveland Cavaliers on SI.